Hey everyone, Katie and Sergeant Steele here, and today I want to talk to you about the Deathstrike. Now this is quite the legendary unit in the Astra Militarum, something we've had in our army for quite a while, and something that is, like I said, legendary and of myth. So in the lore, these are supposed to be super rare weapons that have to get blessings and oils and everything else before they're brought out on the battlefield to absolutely devastating effect. With that, let's dive into it and talk about what this giant missile does on the battlefield. So first off, with its stat line, movement 10, toughness 10, 3 up save, 11 wounds, leadership 7, OC 3. So it is a kind of closed compartment vehicle, so that's why it's got the toughness 10 rather than toughness 9, unlike the Basilisk and the Wyvern. So it's similar to the Manticore in its stat line. That makes it pretty resilient. It can actually put up with a decent amount of fire and stay in the game. Now let's talk about its weapons. With this, we have, of course, a heavy bolter or heavy flamer on the front. You can take a hunter killer missile, which I don't have here. But its main weapon, what really sets it apart, is the Deathstrike missile. Now, the Deathstrike missile is a very special weapon. Let's actually talk about how you aim it first, its ability, and then we'll talk about its stat line for the weapon. So to aim it, you have to use the Deathstrike missile ability. In your shooting phase, each time this model is selected to shoot, if it has not shot with its Deathstrike missile this battle, you can do one of the following in addition to resolving this model's ranged attacks. You could designate target. If this model does not have a Deathstrike target marker on the battlefield, place a Deathstrike target marker for this model anywhere on the battlefield. Okay. So that's here. I got one of these. This is from Grotzskull Workshop, and you can order yours too with discount code KatieandSteele23. And you just put this down, or you can use anything else to kind of mark this. And you got to have a center. So that's why this has a skull on it right there in the middle. And you put that down on the battlefield. And it could be anywhere. There's no limit. It's not battlefield edge. It's not deployment zone. It's not line of sight. Anywhere on the battlefield. Okay, there's no restrictions to that. Hey everyone, Katie and Sergeant Steele here. Wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about a product that I really love, and you should check it out and see if you love it too. So these are order and also kind of status tokens from Grotzskull Workshop. You can order these with a discount using KatieandSteele23 discount code. That's KatieandSteele23. And what these are, it's all of the Astra Militarum orders. Its various abilities such as reroll 1s and indirect +1 for aircraft and vulnerable saves, -2 to movement, your Deathstrike marker, battle shocked, and objective secured tokens, especially for your Cadians. So these here can help you put these down on the battlefield and then remember what orders you've issued or what statuses or effects are currently impacting your opponent or your own units. The next thing you could do, your second option, is adjust target. If this model has a Deathstrike target marker on the battlefield, so you've already placed it, move that marker to anywhere else on the battlefield. Okay, so if you haven't shot the Deathstrike missile yet, you can either place a marker or you can move that marker. Pretty simple. Then, after you either placed or moved in the following phase, then you can use this weapon. You can use the giant missile on the back, and that's where its weapon abilities come in. So let's now talk about that. It is blast, one shot, and it has plasma warhead ability. It has no range because it's based on this marker, so that's why there's no range. It is 2d6 shots, ballistic skill 2 plus, strength 16, AP -4, 1 damage. Now, let me talk about how you use this, and then I'll talk about the pros and cons of the weapon. So one shot obviously can only be used once per battle. So once you fire this giant missile, that's it. And what I've done is mine's just not glued on. I just set it down here, and this way I can take it off and remember that I've shot it. The plasma warhead ability though, the bear can only shoot this weapon in your shooting phase, and only if it remains stationary this turn and you did not use the Deathstrike missile ability to designate target or adjust target this phase. So in a turn where you place your marker or adjust your marker, you can't shoot. A turn in which you remain stationary and did not do any of these things, you can shoot. When the bear shoots this weapon, do not select a target. Instead, resolve this weapon's attacks, rolling for each unit within 6 inches of the center of the Deathstrike target marker individually. So there's no limit to the number of units that can be hit by this. It's every unit within 6 inches of the center of the Deathstrike marker ability. Now, one key thing here, it doesn't say enemy unit, so I think this does allow us to shoot our own units. Because usually it's enemy units, right? Or enemy models and so on and so forth. So this allows you to hit all units within 6 inches. That's really great because what this can do is give you great control over the battlefield. So let me explain. This weapon is pretty threatening. 2d6 shots with blast means you could absolutely wipe out infantry units that are like low wound infantry units. So 1 wound apiece, maybe even 2 wound. You could do some pretty serious damage to those as well if they're 5 models or less. And with strength 16, you're going to be wounding on 2. So you're hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. AP -4 means they either get a 6-up save or invuln save or no save. But it's only damage 1. It's not flat 2, it's not flat 3, it's damage 1. That's where I start to kind of have some problems with it, because it doesn't have devastating wounds. It doesn't have mortal wounds. So if your opponent gets an invuln save, this is not a great weapon, right? You could end up getting 2 shots. You could end up getting 15 or 16 shots with blast, and if you maximize your 2d6 roll. There's just so much variation in the outcome. So with that, this is not a reliable unit to kill models with. Let me just say that outright. It's not reliable to kill other units or even hordes of other models or tanks or anything else. Because it can wound anything, right? Vehicles, infantry, elites, Angron, Mortarion, right? It can wound all those things. But the issue being is how much damage are you really going to do? Are you going to take units off the table? With hitting on a 2+, it's really nice. It doesn't say you can't use Daring Recon, so you could give yourself reroll 1s against one of the units within 6 inches of this marker. That's also beneficial to guarantee those hits, but how many hits are you going to get? One of the things you may want to do with this is make sure that when you set it off, there are as many units as possible, or your opponent will let be possible, within 6 inches of this marker. This way, you can roll that 2d6 for each unit, okay? Because it says very specifically, you roll individually. So if you have a 20-man unit of traitors, you have 5 Chaos Marines, you have a Rhino, you roll for each of those things, okay? And you resolve them separately, as if this thing shot multiple times, but it's only once and it's against each target within that 6 inches. So that's really good. And that's the way to maximize it. So in case you end up rolling Snake Eyes or versus Boxcars and this and that, you really get the most out of the weapon. That's if you want to do damage with it. Well, what do I recommend you actually do with the Deathstrike? Well, a couple things. First, it is OC3. That's modest, but you could put it in your backfield and set it on your deployment zone objective marker and just have it sit there to screen out your opponent from getting onto the objective marker. Say this is the objective marker, this is the back line of your deployment zone, right? Stick this in between the deep strike area and your marker so your opponents can't easily get to it. They got to charge it or go around or something. Okay, so that's one thing you could do. What you really want to do with it in terms of its shooting and using its Deathstrike marker ability is put this on places you do not want your opponent to have units. This is a deterrent. It deters your opponent from being in a spot, from crowding a spot. Now that could be anywhere based on the context of your game, the strategy that you and your opponents are deploying. That could be you put this on their deployment zone objective marker, could be the middle of the battlefield, it could be off to one corner or the side. It could be just to screen your opponent out from getting, all 4 quadrants, and on their next turn, If they draw engage on all fronts or something, they got to move to a certain area in order to achieve that. And you just put your marker right there, right at that spot. And so that everything within 6 inches is going to get hit by it. And it deters your opponent from wanting to do that. And then if they do it, they hop on that objective marker, they run to that edge of the battlefield or that quadrant or whatever, you punish them for it. Nobody wants to get hit with a 2d6 shot, blast, 2 to hit, strength 16 -4 weapon, even if it is only 1 damage. They really don't want to get hit by it most of the time. So this way you can come in and just absolutely annihilate them if they choose to go against where you've put your marker. So that's really the role of this unit, is deterrence. You want to force your opponent to move away from an area or keep them in an area even, because you could screen them out. Say you set this outside, just outside their deployment zone. I mean, 6 inches from center, that means a 12-inch length, a 12-inch diameter circle that they don't want to be in. Well, with tables only being 4 feet wide and 5 feet long for match play, that's a decent swath of area that your opponent may not want to move into. And so you could funnel your opponent also to certain lanes of fire using this weapon. It doesn't just have to be an objective marker or try to deny engage on all fronts or this and that. You could do it to literally deter them from walking into a zone to get them into the area you want them to be. Maybe line up with your Rogel Dorn so you can hit them with the oppressor cannon, or maybe so you can get direct line of sight with your artillery units, so on and so forth. This is to control your opponent. That is the key role of the Deathstrike, and that's really how I'd recommend thinking about it and using it. If you try to use this as a damage weapon, what's going to happen is your opponent's just going to move out of the way. They're probably just going to move off that point. They're going to get away from this, and then you're going to have to use the ability to adjust, and then they're going to move again. And then you're going to adjust, and they're going to move again. Just set it on a point or an area you want them away from. And if they refuse to move, then you make them regret it. And that's what you're going to do with this. I would recommend saving a CP to reroll the number of shots if there is a particular unit that you want to do a lot of damage to. But that would be the most I would do to buff this, and also outside of like Scout Sentinel, right? Giving it reroll 1s for a single unit, mind you, right? Because the Daring Recon ability is a unit. Unless you have multiple Scout Sentinel units doing multiple Daring Recons to units all within 6 inches of this marker, then maybe you could get multiple reroll 1s against multiple units. It just depends on how you're building your lists and how you are running them. The downside, I think, is the no devastating or mortal wounds. I think if this weapon did mortal wounds or devastating wounds, say even like on a 5-up, on a 4-up, something, not just on 6s, but if it actually got those types of wounds more frequently, more often than not, I think it would be well worth it. I think it'd be okay if they increase this by 30 points and then give it that ability. I would take it. It would definitely be something I would play. Right now, it does have a fun and interesting role, but it doesn't feel like the giant nuclear missile it's intended to be. It's a little off from that. Or maybe if they don't want to give it more wounds, because I understand where that could get egregious, they could give it maybe 4d6 shots or 3d6 shots, so on and so forth, just to help guarantee that you are going to decimate whatever gets hit by this. Because that's it. You're going to shoot it once, it's done. And then what are you going to do with this? When its missile's gone. At most, you can screen or you can take objectives. And that's really what I'd recommend doing with it, which is why I recommend having it near your backfield objective marker. And what I would do after I shoot the weapon, if your opponent comes near your backfield and you don't want them on the objective marker, charge with your Deathstrike after you shot it to tie up your opponent's units, because they're not going to kill this thing in melee most of the time. Some units can, but most cannot. So you're going to tie them up. You're going to tar pit them. And then what are they going to do? So those are kind of the ways that I would approach using this weapon, things I wish it had, and so forth. That's it. That's all I got for the Deathstrike today. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've been enjoying all the unit reviews and everything else I've been doing. If you have, please like and subscribe and follow me here. Leave your comments down below if you think there's anything I've forgotten, anything I did not mention that you think is important to the Deathstrike. Keynote being that it doesn't have the indirect ability, so it's not impacted by the indirect rule or its changes. It's always going to hit on twos. That's really cool. That's a benefit. Or if I missed anything else, that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head right now. I didn't mention it because it's not on the rule card, but I'm mentioning it now in case anybody's like, well, what about indirect fire? It doesn't have it. That's not part of the weapons rules. And so let me know down below. I'd really love to hear from you guys. I think when we're all informed about various tactics and ideas and strategies, we all perform better and we all enjoy this game a lot more. So please engage down below. I'd love to hear from you all. So, as always, have fun wargaming. And remember, Cadia stands.